English translation 387th contact. Thursday, 5th May 2005, 23:03 hours.
Greetings to you, Ptah, and be warmly welcomed.
As I have already noticed during the correction work, you are again suffering from severe back pain, which you call lumbago, which I will take care of in a moment. Greetings to you too, my friend, but now let me see. So that is done. Do you feel better now?
You leave me no choice. Yes, everything has become much more bearable. Thanks, Ptah.
Now make sure that you do not lift heavy weights and that you do not do any wrong contortions, otherwise the evil will attack you again.
May I bombard you with questions?
Of course, if you feel like it.
I have been asked about the religious, sectarian, military, terrorist, and political situation in the world, and whether things are still up in the air in this regard, which could fulfill the prophecy regarding World War III next year, 2006.
With regard to a revival of religions, Catholicism is particularly noteworthy, for which all levers are being pulled, as you say, to maintain it, and even great efforts are being made to make it flourish again. The great driving force behind this is the new Pope Joseph Ratzinger, who calls himself Benedict XVI, a ridiculousness, by the way, to which the popes indulge themselves, because their respective renaming as pope corresponds to a denial of their own name, the value of which is negatively falsified. And it must be said that the efforts of the Catholic and Protestant churches, as well as of various sects and free churches, are unfortunately producing certain results, especially among many young people who are seduced by the falsities of the religious faith. Because these act on young people like a narcotic drug, making it impossible for them to distinguish between lies, fantasy, and effective truth. The result is that reality is displaced by wishful thinking and fantasy, and the effective truth is trampled underfoot. But now, as far as the Third World War is concerned, which is predicted for the year 2006, the following is to be said. At present, the greatest warmonger, George W. Bush, is holding back and is trying to make good children all over the world in order to make friends. The friendships, however, are in reality only friendships of convenience and a slimy and insidious way to gather fellow believers dependent on the USA, who are on a par with America in terms of war, terror, and economic exchange. The secret background is to make these one comrades in arms dependent on the USA and to make them followers in the effort that America will finally achieve the goal of comprehensive world domination. All of this is based on underhanded, infamous plans, which makes it appear as if a truly friendly cooperation for a global peace is being cut to size, while underhandedly and subtly, everything is geared towards lust for power and world domination. Thus, at least for the time being, it seems that everything is changing for the better and that prophecy is therefore not being fulfilled. And if the overall situation in this regard continues to improve, then indeed everything is still turning for the better. However, it must be remembered that in the field of politics, organized terrorism and military and warlike terror of the powerful countries, or by the power-obsessed, selfish, autocratic, irresponsible, unscrupulous, insane, vindictive, hateful, and sometimes sectarian leaders, everything can change for the worse and evil within hours. If such a change occurs, then in spite of all good omens, within a very short time, everything can still degenerate to such an extent that a worldwide catastrophe results. So we can only hope that there will not be a calm before the storm, but that the calm will expand and become stability, at least in terms of a third world war. Small people's wars, etc., are other factors that are not connected with a third world war. so that such wars will continue to be constantly pre-programmed, and unfortunately it will not be possible to eliminate them for many decades and possibly even centuries.
Unpleasant. But regarding the next year 2006, it would be very gratifying if the prophecy would not be fulfilled, and the way for the better would be maintained. In this regard, do you have no knowledge yet of what exactly will happen?
We have not yet explored the year 2006 because we did not expect you to continue to be interested in such predictions. And as I said before, such predictions are not important for us. And on the other hand, we are working them out only for you, and only for short periods of time, for 1 or at most 2 or 8 weeks, because they do not make sense in the relation that they would have a positive effect on the Earth humans.
At least that, because that way I am always somewhat informed about some important events in the world that are going to happen in the next few days. Although they are usually only burdensome for me, I can deal with them a little before they happen. But one more question. It is constantly reported that new small moons are being discovered at Jupiter and Saturn. What's that all about? On the 11th of October 1989, I already spoke with Ketzel about it. Contact Reports Volume Number 5, page 48, where I said the following. In the 123rd reported contact, on 4th of June 1979, 10 years ago, Sim Yaseh and I had a conversation regarding the moons of Jupiter. Here, this was spoken briefly. Just one last question, also because of Jupiter, which has many dozens of moons but only a few large ones, but more smaller formations which are actually not real moons and have not yet been discovered, precisely because they are so small. There are about 100, if I am not mistaken, or even more, and they are actually fragments and other smaller objects captured by Jupiter. Will they be discovered next, and may I talk about it?
You should keep quiet about it for at least another 20 years. But these satellites of Jupiter will be discovered by terrestrial astronomers.
Regarding the predictions, it may be good for you to know certain events because I know how you are burdened by world events, which could be changed with a little rationality if people would listen to your wise advice. Regarding the small moons of Jupiter and Saturn, it must be said that they are not actual moons, but only small objects of a few kilometers in diameter, as you rightly said with Ketzel. In the case of Jupiter, these small satellites go into a number that moves over 100, while objects that can really be called a moon are only a smaller number. This also applies to Saturn, the actual moons of which are only 29, while many other objects are more likely to be called fractional satellites, etc. But now I will tell you a few more upcoming events that are worth mentioning and fall outside the ordinary. So in the state of Burma in the next few days, it will turn out that after about 20 years, there will be another bomb attack, which fortunately, however, will cause only few deaths and injuries. In Iraq, it also emerges that the American troops are beginning to act as a great avenger and, as a result, are presuming to use force of arms against Iraqis who do not agree with the American occupation, which will result in 100 deaths on the Iraqi side in the first round of fighting. Such murderous actions by the U.S. forces are mixed with the reawakening terror of the insurgents, which will be greatly expanded in the coming period, especially through suicide bombings and bombings. Increasingly, the suicide bombers are recruited from fanatical Islamists who travel to Iraq from Saudi Arabia, Sudan and other Arab states, Turkey, Syria, and Germany, and many other countries in the world, legally or illegally, for the sole purpose of fighting the American occupiers in a suicidal manner. However, as they themselves are often unable or very difficult to deal with them, they are sticking to the civilian population sympathetic to the Americans, as well as to the Iraqi law and order and security forces, which will be terrorized by suicide attacks and bombs in the coming period, which will cost hundreds of lives. Furthermore, in Colombia, the machinations of a satanic sect are becoming publicly known, which for some time now has been robbing the bodies of the deceased in cemeteries in order to slaughter, dismember, and boil them in order to present them to members of the sect as a meal.
Man-eating. Cannibalism was also practiced in Germany some time ago by a degenerate man who searched for a victim via the internet and killed, cooked, and ate him. As far as I know, the murderer, who also degenerated sexually, has been convicted.
The case is known to me.
It is incomprehensible that such things happen in so-called civilized countries. I also know of some such cases in the USA.
On Earth, cannibalism exists in many states in individual cases, but it is not spoken about openly.
Some cases of cannibalism are also never uncovered.
That is correct.
I'm sorry to interrupt your speech about predictions. Now go ahead with it.
I have said the significant thing that will happen by next Thursday. I will tell you more next week after we have done our correction work. But as I've been asking myself over and over for years, why do the predictions not bring any benefit to the Earth humans in general? The fact is that no success has yet come to light in this regard. Although you have often publicly disseminated predictions since we contacted you, and have also written to many public media and various governments and sent them the predictions. No newspapers or magazines published any of these, just as radio and television stations were not willing to broadcast the warnings. All your efforts were as useless, as also was our time spent exploring future events. Rationality would have to be a given in order to think about such predictions and change everything for the better. But this is not what happens, which conforms to a state of illogic.
You must not expect rationality from the majority of humankind in such matters, for if the necessary rationality is lacking, then hops and malt are wasted. The majority of earthly humanity is only at a stage where rationality and understanding slowly develop in itself and give way to the realization that the human being is his or her own lord and master, mistress, and thus also his or her very own God. And this realization leads the human being to grasp the truth of the fact that they themselves are responsible in every wise for everything and anything, and therefore also for their own fate, for their thoughts and feelings as well as for their actions. It is also this growing realization that makes humans grasp the unreality of religious and other beliefs, and makes them realize that there is no omniscient, omnipotent, loving, praising, punishing, desire-fulfilling, or demanding God who must be worshipped and praised. With this, the cognition turns into knowledge, which then causes humans to discard their religious or other faith and begin to search for the effective truth. This search in turn, when the human has detached himself or herself from belief and religion, leads to the fact that, as all things are perceived and analyzed more and more precisely, the mind slowly begins to grow, whereby the things that appear are slowly grasped and understood. When understanding has been gained, then the facts of knowledge and cognition that have been gained are processed for clear insight and experience, as well as for experiencing, from which then results the rationality, which causes that only clear thinking, that is to say, thinking is done, and that purely logical conclusions are drawn, which then form the basis of action. The mind itself is the ability of the human, through perception as well as through thinking and through feelings, to grasp and open up meanings, relationships and contexts of meaning, etc., and this in practical life as well as in the service of the striving for knowledge and the entire mental block. The mind is a means by which certain practical and theoretical tasks are solved in great variety. But the mind also creates order and a dominion over the infinite variety of all practical and theoretical tasks. Rationality, as a comprehensive cognitive faculty, and the ability to understand as well as the faculty of ideas, thoughts and wholeness in the service of wisdom, is the true depth of clarity and the very essence of unity with logic.
It is always amazing to me how quickly, clearly, distinctly, and comprehensibly you are able to state the important facts of a matter. Everything bubbles out of you easily and flowingly, just like clear, bubbling water that rises from a spring. But now, dear friend, I would like to talk to you about private matters.
Of course, so be it.